treacherous Goodwin Sands are situated 6 miles off the coast of Deal, in the county of Kent, within the United Kingdom. These shifting sandbanks have earned a grim reputation among mariners as the great ship swallower, due to the thousands of vessels that have met their doom within the unstable grit. The sands are particularly dangerous because they change shape constantly, with the tides and currents making maps obsolete almost as soon as they are drawn by cartographers. At low tide, the ground is firm enough for a person to walk upon and play cricket. But as the tide rises, the sand becomes a liquid trap that consumes wood and iron alike. This duality of solid ground and watery grave has created a landscape of fear. Legends surround this desolate stretch of the English Channel, where the restless spirits of drowned sailors are said to scream when the storms roll in from the dark horizon. The most famous of all these spectral tales is the story of the Lady Lovibond, a 3-masted schooner that was deliberately destroyed in a fit of jealous rage. The story begins in the middle of the 18th century, a time when superstition ruled the waves and life at sea was governed by strict, unwritten laws. Sailors believed that bringing a woman onto a merchant ship was an invitation for bad luck and disaster. This ancient belief would prove to be tragically accurate for the crew of the ill-fated Lady Lovibond on a cold February night. Simon Reed was the young and recently married captain of the Lady Lovibond, and he was a man known for his confidence and disregard for old maritime traditions. He had just wed a beautiful woman named Annetta and decided to bring her along on a voyage to Oporto in Portugal to celebrate their union. The ship was laden with cargo, and the crew was hand-picked by Reed himself. But there was an undercurrent of unease among the men as they saw the bride step aboard. Her presence was seen as a direct challenge to the spirits of the sea, and many of the older sailors muttered prayers under their breath as the ship prepared to leave the safety of the harbor. The date was the 13th of February in the year 1748, and the winter air was biting cold as the Lady Lovibond set sail down the River Thames. Captain Simon Reed was oblivious to the tension among his crew, for he was blinded by his love for Annetta and the joy of their recent wedding. He had planned a celebration below deck to mark the occasion, and the wine flowed freely as the ship made its way toward the open waters of the English Channel. The sounds of laughter and music drifted up from the cabin, contrasting sharply with the somber mood of the sailors who kept watch on the freezing deck above. Among those on board was the first mate, John Rivers, who had served with Simon Reed for many years and was considered his closest friend and confidant. However, John Rivers harbored a dark and festering secret that would soon doom them all to a watery grave. He was deeply in love with Annetta himself and had acted as the best man at the wedding, while his heart broke with every vow the couple exchanged. As the voyage began, the jealousy that had been simmering within him began to boil over into a dangerous rage. He watched the happy couple with eyes that burned with hatred, and his grip on his sanity began to loosen. The celebration in the captain quarters continued into the night, with toasts being raised to the health and happiness of the newlyweds. Simon Reed sat with his arm around his bride, unaware that just a few feet away his first mate was plotting a terrible revenge. John Rivers paced the deck, his mind consumed by the image of the woman he loved in the arms of another man. The alcohol he had consumed only fueled his anger, and the whispers of the superstitious crew regarding the woman on board seemed to validate his dark thoughts. He convinced himself that if he could not have Annetta, then no man would ever hold her again. As the Lady Lovibond approached the notorious Goodwin Sands, the wind began to pick up, and the sea grew rougher, mirroring the turmoil in the mind of John Rivers. The captain and his bride were still below deck, lost in their own world of happiness, while the first mate took his position at the helm. The crew trusted Rivers to guide them safely past the dangerous shoals, but his intentions had shifted from navigation to destruction. He looked out at the white foam of the breakers crashing over the sands and saw the perfect instrument for his final act of defiance against the happiness of his rival. The moment of betrayal came swiftly and without warning, as John Rivers deliberately turned the wheel to steer the ship directly toward the heart of the Goodwin Sands. The helmsman on duty tried to intervene, but Rivers struck him down with a heavy belaying pin and took full control of the vessel. The ship lurched violently as it changed course, and the sudden movement alerted the crew that something was terribly wrong. Men shouted in confusion and terror as they realized they were heading straight for the deadly banks that had claimed so many ships before them. The wind howled through the rigging like a banshee, announcing their doom. Down in the cabin, Captain Simon Reed felt the ship heel over and realized instantly that they were in grave danger. He rushed to the deck, leaving Annetta behind only to find his best friend gripping the wheel with a manic expression on his face. Reed shouted orders to change course, but his words were lost in the roar of the wind and the crashing of the waves. John Rivers did not even look at the captain as he held the course steady toward the inevitable destruction. The bond of friendship had been severed, completely replaced by a cold resolve to end everything in one catastrophic moment. The Lady Lovibond struck the Goodwin Sands with a deafening crash that shattered the hull and sent the masts toppling into the churning sea. The impact threw men across the deck, and the screams of the sailors were swallowed by the raging ocean. The ship groaned as its spine snapped under the immense force of the collision, and water rushed into the broken vessel. In the chaos, Simon Reed tried to crawl back to Annetta, the ship was already breaking apart around him. The celebration had turned into a massacre in the blink of an eye, and the sea showed no mercy to those who had tempted fate. Within minutes, the Lady Lovibond was completely destroyed, and every soul on board was lost to the freezing waters of the English Channel. There were no survivors to tell the tale of the jealous first mate and the doomed wedding voyage. The next morning, local fishermen found only debris washing up on the shore, confirming that a tragedy had occurred during the night. The story of the love triangle and the deliberate shipwreck became a local legend whispered in taverns along the coast of Kent. However, the destruction of the physical ship was not the end of the Lady Lovibond, for the intensity of the emotions felt in those final moments left a permanent scar. Exactly 50 years later, on the 13th of February, in the year 1798, the captain of the coaster vessel Edinburgh was navigating the waters near the Goodwin Sands. It was a calm night with good visibility, and the captain was confident in his course. Suddenly, he saw a three-masted schooner sailing directly toward him on a collision course. The ship appeared solid and real, with its sails fully billowing in a wind that the Edinburgh could not feel. The captain shouted for his crew to take evasive action, fearing that they were about to be rammed by the mysterious vessel. The crew of the Edinburgh watched in horror as the schooner bore down on them, and they could hear the sounds of a celebration drifting across the water. There was music and laughter mixed with the noise of the wind in the rigging, creating an eerie dissonance. Just as the collision seemed inevitable, the strange ship veered away and sailed straight onto the Goodwin Sands. The witnesses expected to hear the crunch of timber and see the wreck, but instead the ship simply dissolved into the mist and vanished before their eyes. The captain of the Edinburgh recorded the incident in his log, unable to explain what he had seen. Another 50 years passed, and the legend of the Lady Lovibond had faded into the background of maritime folklore. It was now the 13th of February in the year 1848 when a lifeboat crew from Deal spotted a distress signal out on the sands. They saw a schooner apparently stuck fast on the banks and breaking up in the surf. Believing it to be a real shipwreck in need of assistance, the brave men of the lifeboat launched their vessel and rowed out into the darkness to save the survivors. They were convinced that a tragedy was unfolding, and they risked their lives to reach the site. As the lifeboat approached the location of the wreck, the crew could clearly see the silhouette of the ship and hear the cries of the sailors on board. They prepared their ropes and equipment, ready to haul freezing men from the water. However, as they drew closer, the vision began to waver and fade like smoke in the wind. When they arrived at the exact spot where the ship had been, there was nothing but empty water and the silent shifting sands. There was no wreckage, no debris, and no survivors to be found. The lifeboat crew returned to shore shaken and confused, having chased a phantom. The pattern of the haunting was now becoming clear to the people of Kent, who realized that the Lady Lovibond was destined to return every 50 years. The anniversary in 1898 drew significant attention, and many locals kept a watchful eye on the Goodwin Sands. Sure enough, sightings were reported by multiple witnesses along the coast. They described a vessel with an eerie green glow surrounding its hull, sailing purposefully toward its doom. Some claimed to see figures on the deck, dressed in the fashion of the previous century, seemingly unaware that they were ghosts trapped in a time loop. One witness in 1898 described seeing a woman in a white dress standing near the rail of the phantom ship, her face twisted in a silent scream. This was believed to be the spirit of Annetta, the bride who died before her honeymoon could truly begin. Beside her, the figure of a man was seen struggling at the wheel, locked in an eternal battle with his own jealousy. The spectral ship replayed the final moments of the tragedy with terrifying accuracy before vanishing once again into the sands. The reports from this year cemented the legend of the Lady Lovibond as one of the most compelling ghost stories of the sea. The year 1948 brought a modern twist to the legend, as radar technology and more advanced navigation systems were in use. Captain Bull Prestwick of a passing vessel reported seeing a schooner on the Goodwin Sands enveloped in a strange green mist. He described the ship as looking incredibly real and solid, yet his radar showed nothing on the screen. This discrepancy between visual confirmation and technological silence terrified the captain, who realized he was witnessing something supernatural. He watched as the phantom ship broke apart and sank just as it had done 2 centuries prior. Captain Prestwick later described the sound that emanated from the green mist as a mixture of joy and terror. He heard the distinct sound of a fiddle playing a lively tune, which was slowly drowned out by the groaning of timber and the shrieking of wind. It was as if the wedding party was doomed to celebrate their final moments over and over again, forever oblivious to the fate that awaited them. The experience left the captain deeply disturbed, and he refused to sail near the Goodwin Sands on the 13th of February ever again. His account added a layer of modern credibility to the ancient tale. The haunting of the Lady Lovibond is unique because it is not just a visual apparition, but a sensory experience that replays the emotions of the past. The Goodwin Sands themselves seem to act as a recording medium, holding onto the intense psychic energy released during the betrayal and murder. Paranormal investigators suggest that the limestone and quartz in the sands might possess properties that trap this residual energy, releasing it only when the planetary alignment mirrors that of the original event. The 50-year cycle suggests a celestial clockwork governing the appearance of the phantom Brigantine. The figure of John Rivers remains the central villain of this spectral drama, a man whose inability to let go of his envy condemned dozens of innocent men to death. His ghost is often described as the most distinct figure on the deck, his face contorted with malice and madness. Witnesses claim that he does not look at the sea or the sails, but stares fixatedly at the spot where the captain and his bride would have been standing. It is a portrait of eternal obsession, where the soul is locked in the moment of its greatest sin, unable to find redemption or release. The ghost of Simon Reed is less frequently seen, but is sometimes reported as a frantic figure running across the deck in the final seconds before the ship dissolves. He represents the tragedy of trust betrayed the man who brought his enemy aboard and called him a friend. His spirit seems confused and desperate, forever trying to reach his wife before the water claims them. The tragedy of the Lady Lovibond is not just the shipwreck, but the destruction of love and friendship by the darker aspects of human nature. This emotional weight keeps the ship anchored to the mortal realm. Annetta, the innocent bride, is perhaps the most tragic figure of all, for she was merely a pawn in the deadly game between the two men. Her presence on the ship was the catalyst for the disaster. Yet she had no control over the events that unfolded. In the spectral sightings, she is often seen standing still amidst the chaos, her white dress glowing in the moonlight. Some say she looks out toward the shore, as if waiting for a rescue that will never come. Her spirit is a reminder of the superstition that labeled her bad luck, when the true danger came from the heart of a man. The Goodwin Sands continue to be a place of danger and mystery, where the wrecks of over 2,000 ships lie, buried beneath the shifting surface. Divers who have explored the area report a pervasive sense of unease, and many refuse to dive there alone. The underwater landscape is a graveyard of maritime history, where the bones of ships jut out from the sand like skeletal fingers. The Lady Lovibond is just one of many stories, but it is the one that has captured the imagination of the world due to its romantic and tragic elements. There was great anticipation for the return of the ship in the year 1998, and crowds gathered on the beaches of Deal hoping to catch a glimpse of the Phantom. While no definitive mass sighting occurred that year, there were isolated reports of strange lights and sounds out on the water. Some skeptics argued that the curse had finally been broken, or that the atmospheric conditions were not right for the projection to appear. Others believe that the ship did appear, but was simply missed in the darkness, or dismissed as a trick of the light by modern observers. The absence of a widely publicized sighting in 1998 has led to speculation about when the Lady Lovibond will return next. Some believe the cycle is immutable, and that the year 2048 will see the next major manifestation. The legend has become a part of the cultural fabric of Kent, and the story is passed down through generations of families who live by the sea. They teach their children to respect the Goodwin Sands and to be wary of the 13th of February. The warning is clear. Never trust the calm waters around the great ship swallower. The psychological aspect of the haunting is what makes it truly terrifying, for it forces us to confront the destructive power of jealousy. The story of John Rivers serves as a grim cautionary tale about the dangers of letting dark emotions fester unchecked. The phantom ship is a physical manifestation of a psychological breakdown, a floating monument to human frailty. It serves as a mirror reflecting the worst capabilities of the human heart, reminding us that the most dangerous storms are the ones that rage within us. Mariners who sail the English Channel today still treat the area with a healthy dose of respect, and many avoid the Goodwin Sands entirely if they can help it. The charts mark the area as a hazard to navigation, but the local lore marks it as a hazard to the soul. Modern radar and GPS have made travel safer, but they cannot detect the presence of the supernatural. There are things in the ocean that defy explanation, and the Lady Lovibond remains one of the most enduring mysteries of the maritime world. As the year 2048 approaches, interest in the legend is likely to spike again, with a new generation of ghost hunters hoping to capture proof of the phantom Brigantine. They will bring cameras and sensors, hoping to record the green glow and the sounds of the doomed wedding party. But for now, the Lady Lovibond rests within the sands, waiting for the stars to align and the curtain to rise on her tragic play once more. The script is written in stone, and the actors are ready to take their places. The Goodwin Sands hide their secrets while shifting and covering the remains of the past with layers of sediment and time. But on quiet nights, when the moon is hidden behind thick cloud, sailors still report feeling a sudden drop in temperature when passing near the area. They speak of a sudden chill that penetrates their heavy coats and a feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. These subtle signs serve as a reminder that the Lady Lovibond is never truly gone, but merely sleeping beneath the waves. Ultimately, the phantom Brigantine of the Goodwin Sands is a story that will never die as long as there are people to tell it. It speaks to our fascination with the afterlife and our fear of sudden violent death. The image of the wedding ship turning into a coffin is a powerful symbol that resonates across centuries. It reminds us that happiness is fragile, and that betrayal can come from those we trust the most. The ship sails on in our collective memory, a ghost of the past that refuses to rest. The final lingering thought is that the crew of the Lady Lovibond may not know they are dead. They may be trapped in a perpetual state of celebration, followed by terror, repeating the cycle without any awareness of the time that has passed. If this is true, then their hell is not fire and brimstone, but a never-ending loop of their final tragic hour. They are prisoners of the Goodwin Sands, bound to the spot where their lives were stolen. And out there, in the dark, cold water, they are waiting for the next 50 years to pass, so they can scream for help once again.